Question: when and how is it appropriate to criticize an aspect of a culture, a society, specifically a component of any larger system? When is it appropriate, and how is it appropriate to question that? So, one of my thoughts on the matter would be, um, if the thing that you're questioning in the system, firstly, if it's axiomatic to the system, if it's like a cornerstone of the building that is that system, then if by taking it out the whole thing would crumble, um, you have to ask yourself and be ready to present the answer to the question, what would you replace that system with? So, for instance, I see a lot of people criticizing capitalism, and they criticize it on the basis of inequality, um, which is a misdiagnosis because inequality is a fact of nature. Salmon never gets to eat the eagle. But, let's say that capitalism exacerbates inequality by providing opportunity, which increases inequality. So I think it would be fair to say that inequality is a cornerstone of capitalism, in that if you take out the principle of inequality, you take out capitalism. The question is, what would you replace that with? And most of the people don't have an answer because they're not on the level of being able to create anything, any system. They can barely organize their own lives. They definitely can't organize a society. They don't understand how to do that. It's well beyond their scope. So that's the first thing. If you're going to tear out a cornerstone of a system, and that system is part of your life and other people's lives, figure out what to replace it with before you criticize it publicly or formulate your ideas a little more. Secondly, criticize the parts of the system that are, I'm trying to think of how to say this, that are active. So, I'm trying to think of a good example. Say you're criticizing an aspect of physics, which most people don't do. Most people usually just criticize sociological phenomenon because I think they're more complicated, so it's easier to find flaws. They're less rigorously defined. But let's say you're criticizing physics, a physical law. Trying to criticize the underlying principles of this system, like, for instance, mathematics, logic, reason, these kinds of things, the things that it's based on, is not going to get you anywhere, because ultimately, if you do that enough, you're going to have to throw out the system you used to think. Like, imagine that there are like multiple hierarchies of ideas, and if you pull something out of the bottom, it undermines your ability to move up into the higher levels of abstraction. A good example of this, I was talking to a friend of a friend, and he said that basically objective reality was not real. All reality was subjective because English had multiple interpretations. Now, if I have to tell you why that's dumb, you should just stop watching this. But the problem with it is that he's speaking to me in English. So I pointed that out to him and he didn't understand it, so I had to give him an example, like saying, all right, let's say there's two paths in a survival scenario. One path leads to food, the other path leads to a sudden cliff where you'll fall off. The abstraction is rooted in life or death, it's rooted in physical survival. He understood that, finally. So that is in a sense, an objective truth that if you go that way, you get food. If you go that way, you die. He couldn't really understand how there were multiple, in a system with multiple components, like a government or a social system, that objectivity could continue to manifest, which is fair because a lot of economists and mathematicians don't really understand how that works, but it doesn't mean that the end results of social abstractions are not objective. It just means that they're probabilistic, statistical, but at the end of the day, they do have an objective basis, an objective reality. And ultimately, this guy's whole point was that English wasn't real, which, if you're arguing that in English, it's already too late. So I see this happening a lot. People boiling things down to their basic core suppositions to the point where the core breaks and then you don't have anything to stand on. I got in an argument with a friend about race and a few months ago, and this is a black guy. I'm not black. He initially told me that I didn't have a right to speak because on the matter, it was about police shootings around the death of George Floyd. He said I didn't have a right to speak on it because I wasn't black. I told him that anybody could read statistics. It didn't matter what the color of your skin was, so I still had objective knowledge on that. And then he went on to basically circumambulate his entire point and say that race wasn't real, which kind of, deleted the argument about whether cops were racist or not. So there's all these redundancies going around. I'm not sure why they are being promulgated, why they're so common, these obviously redundant things. I'm pretty sure it's that the state of modern politics is essentially tribal at the moment. People are trying to fit into their tribe. They're not trying to actually tell the truth. So I guess just notice when the things you're saying 2 plus 2 doesn't add up to 4. The logic in what you're saying is not consistent. Please notice that because it's getting really frustrating pointing it out to people. There's no point in arguing with somebody who doesn't make any sense, is incoherent and hysterical. So the less people are like that, the more progress can actually be made toward real truth. Just think about if what you're saying actually mathematically makes sense when it's coming out of your mouth. And you'll save a lot of people a lot of time correcting you from being obnoxious.